Good evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am Trisha Denyogi and I'll be the host for the evening. It is my great pleasure to have you all here today on the occasion of the launch ceremony of our latest title, Who is a Parsi by Prochi and Mehta. Growing up, I heard a story of how the Parsis came to India. While most of you present here might already know the story, I would like to share for those who are not aware of it. The legend says that Zoroastrian ships arrived in Sanjan, a port in the state of Gujarat. The then king, Jadav Rana, believed that the language of Indians and Persians were different. So, to welcome the strangers and communicate that the land was already filled up with people till the brim, he sent a full glass of milk to indicate that the area is overcrowded. The Zoroastrian priests immediately got the message. They matched the king's wit by adding sugar to the glass of milk before sending it back. Of course, the king was impressed, and there was no turning back. Parsis thus settled and assimilated, blended in India like sugar in the milk. Since the arrival in 936 Common Era, the Parsis have endeavored to sweeten the country with their good deeds. The Parsi community in India and globally is well known for its charity, philanthropy, and support for good causes. They are also known for their hospitality, their impeccable sartorial style, and most of all, their sense of humor, which we will certainly get a taste of during the course of the evening. Mrs. Prochi N. Mehta is not only a consummate writer, but also a highly successful sportsperson who has won as many as 52 gold medals for India, a recipient of the Ladies Study Group Award for contribution to the field of sports. Mrs. Mehta is also the president of the Athletic Coaches Association of Bengal and the first female president of the Calcutta Parsi Club. She is also actively involved in Selville, the advertising company established by her father, and is a director in several of the companies. Thank you, ma'am. I would now like to invite Professor Nirmakanti Bhattacharjee, former director of NBT, National Book Trust, former editor of Sahitya Academy's journal Indian Literature, former director of KK Birla Foundation, and currently the editorial director of Neogi Books for the welcome address.
Dignitaries on the dais, the distinguished dignitaries on the dais, and respected members of the audience and friends, I join Trisha Denyogi in welcoming all of you to this program. As you know, this evening we have gathered here to celebrate the publication of Prochi Mehta's latest book, quite poignantly titled Who is a Parsi, and quite elegantly produced by Neogi Books. It is this obsessive desire for exclusiveness which Prochi and Mehta challenges in her book, Who is a Parsi, on all other fronts. Because in chapter 15 of her book, which is entitled Parsi Personal Law, she refers to a case extensively, a case between Saklak and one lady called Bella, who was denied entry to a Parsi temple. Though she was a Parsi, she was born to a Parsi mother, but her father was a non-Parsi. And though she was later married to a Parsi husband. So the case was a landmark case, and the entire proceedings of the case, the judgment of the case, the transcript of the whole thing has been given by the author at an appendix at the end of the book. I should also here tell you that this is not Prochi Mehta's first book on the Parsis. 3-4 years back, she wrote another book called Pioneering Parsis of Calcutta, and that was also, we were fortunate in publishing that book also. So this is a second book in the tradition. And in that book, again, it was very meticulously researched. She dusted the cobwebs of history to reveal those adventurous Parsis, arduous journey to Calcutta, the brave hearts, their broad-minded approach to life, their open-mindedness, and their desire to give and to enhance the quality of life of the people around them, not just of themselves. I would think that that book is a treasure trove of facts relating to the great Parsi heritage of Calcutta. As all of us know, and as Trisha also has mentioned, that Parsis are believed to be people of Persian origin who went through religious persecution and fled Iran, beginning with the 7th century CE. And a later influx was towards the late 19th, early 20th century. Again, the Iranis and the Zoroastrians. They were accepted by India. They found India a conducive place to grow. They found the peaceful atmosphere of India, after their liking, and they developed, they shone like anything, And they contributed a lot to the public life of India also. Their contribution to Indian public life can never be overemphasized. But why this book? These are all in praise of the Parsis, in eulogy of the Parsis. The question is, which is now disturbing, that the Parsi population is dwindling in a very alarming rate. And the entire Parsi community presence is in danger. Now, Prochi Mehta, in this book, has analyzed the reasons of this, of this phenomenon of decadence. And she has gone into the root cause of it. The prime cause being the non-acceptance within the Parsi community of children from cross marriages, especially is the male parent is a non-Parsi. So that seems to be the crux of the program. And in doing so, our author has meticulously documented personal letters, newspaper reports and clippings, then court proceedings and judgments, and also opinions of famous Parsis. Even Foley S. Nariman in his foreword has mentioned that the Parsi personal law is the main cause of the decrease of Parsi population. Now, this is why I would think that now that the Parsi women themselves, and who are highly educated, themselves are coming out openly, demanding that their children from a marriage with a non-Parsi should be accepted within the Parsi community. So I think now all this is happening, and this is the right time for such a book to come out. I'm sure the book will contribute a lot to the Parsi community. And I would like to end by mentioning that especially against the backdrop of India's political situation now, when the Uniform Civil Code is being hotly debated, and it is believed that it is through Uniform Civil Code the gender justice, the caste equality can be safeguarded. which are often jeopardized because of the presence of various customary laws and personal laws prevalent in Indian society. So I would like to echo the hope of Prachi Mehta towards the end of book, as she says, that we hope that someday it will be established in the court of Indian law that biological maternity is as important as the biological paternity in making the racial claim to the Parsi life. With these words, friends, I welcome you all of again once more and request Trisha to take forward the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya, for setting the ground for the launch of the book. Now may I request our chief guest, our guest of honor, our author, and Professor Bhattacharya to launch the book, to unleash, unfold, release the book. Now, may I request Mrs. Mehta to say a few words introducing the book and share her motivation behind writing the book.
Good evening, friends, and thank you all for your valuable time and coming here to attend this book launch. A very special thank you to Mr. K.C. Debu, Mr. Yazid Kapadia, Ms. Shehnaz Kama, and Mr. Keki Daruwala. I must tell you, Ms. Shehnaz Kama has just received the Outstanding Achievement Award at the International Zoroastrian Conference. Well done, Shehnaz. And thanks to my publisher, Mr. Niyogi Books, Mr. Bikash Niyogi is here, for organizing this book launch. Trisha has asked me to say a few words on the process of ideation and conception of the book. Well, we the Parsis have been in India for a long time, from about 2,500 years ago. But who is the Parsi, nobody knows. There's no definition of the word Parsi. Though small in number, we have contributed a lot towards the development of India, especially in Gujarat and the cities of Bombay and Calcutta. There are some studies done on the community, but there's no study done on the rights of women, rights and privileges of women. And women are being discriminated against on the basis of some folklore or some misconceptions. So I decided to, when my own daughter faced this discrimination, I decided to look into the matter further. My daughter is married a non-Zoroastrian, but they had decided from the beginning to bring their children up in the Zoroastrian faith. And so we used to take the children to the fire temple until one day we were asked not to. On asking why, we were told the trust deed is sacrosanct. So I asked for the copy of the trust deed, and I read it and learned that we are to follow the Bugasarat priests of Navsari and Dastur Kekobad, Adarbad, Dastur Naushirwan in particular. So that got me thinking. I said, who are these two? Why are they so important? What happened before 1915 when the trust deed was written that the settler has asked us to specifically follow these two? And this started my research into who is a Parsi. Mr. Nariman has helped me tremendously in this book. I did not know Mr. Nariman, but as I had done all this legal research, I didn't know whether it was correct or not, so I sent my manuscript to him to look at it. He didn't reply for some time. In the meantime, I sent him a copy of the book I had written on my dad, Mr. Rusibi Gimi, and he sent a reply saying that it's very well researched. So I presume he was talking about the manuscript I sent him. So he said, no, please send it again, I want to read it. So I sent it again to him. Mr. Nariman is 93 years old, I think, but he had that entire manuscript printed out, and he corrected it by hand, and he removed the pages which he thought were wrong. He just put a line through it. Then he added the correct information. He wrote 5 chapters in the book, and he also advised me as to which judgments to add in the appendix, which I did. Then he returned the entire manuscript to me, the handwritten one, And he told me that you have got a lot of important information, but it's spread haphazardly all over the book. So he gave me a detailed list of how to rearrange all the matter in the book, which I did. Point by point, he gave about 30 points how to do it. And I rearranged the entire manuscript, sent it back to him. So he corrected it again. Then he told me, after he was satisfied, he told me, now I will write the foreword. So he wrote the foreword and returned it to me. So Mr. Nariman, is like a magic wand over the manuscript, and we have the book today. Now, there's a lot that we did not know about our community. The first thing is that I have published in my book copies from a judgment called Saklat versus Bella. What we have today available is about 20 pages of a judgment, which was the final judgment by the Privy Council. But there's 1,000 pages of judgment which was lying in the Privy Council archives, which Mitra Sharafi had photocopied page by page, and she sent me that entire manuscript. From this manuscript, in this manuscript, the high priests of the community have been cross-examined in court. And these are the high priests, Dastur Kekobad, Adarbar, Dastur Noshirwan, who went to Rangoon to do Bella's Naujot. Bella was a daughter of a Parsi mother and non-Parsi father. And Dastur Kekashru Jamaspi, head priest of the Bhugasadat sect, who went to Bombay to perform Ratan Tata's wedding to Suzanne Bray. Suzanne Bray was a French Christian lady. He first converted her to a Parsi by doing her Naujot, and then he married her to Ratan Tata by Parsi rites. Now, I don't mean our present Ratan Tata. This is Ratan Tata by Tata 100 years ago. So these are the two priests we are to follow. And so now I understood the meaning of why the settler had given these two particular priests to follow in our Agyari trust deed. And I really hope that this influx of 1,000 pages of information will change the concept of our community of what we were and what we think we are today. Now, Parsis are usually depicted as a very well-to-do community, but this was not so. We came as refugees, we came very poor. We mixed with the poorest of the poor. In fact, we had completely forgotten our religion until about 1499, when a certain Changa Asha came and he retaught us our religion. He gave us our Sadra and Kasti, he gave all the people over there, and he sent priests to Persia with questions to bring back answers on religion. These were called the Rivayats. And these questions and answers on religion continued for a period of 300 years. Obviously, we had no personal law of our own because we had completely forgotten our religion. But in the early 1800s, we were governed by a panchayat, that is, a committee of 5. And their method of controlling the community was by beating of the shoe. And they got special permission from the British to enforce this system of punishment. Now, occasionally they would issue bandobas. That is, these are the new laws for the community. And the bandobast of 1830 is published in this book. It says that Parsi men and women were having affairs with Parsis and people of other communities, and all the children born out of these affairs were being admitted into the community. The Parsi Panchayat wanted to stop this, but it did not happen. That raises the question, why were Parsi men and women having so many illegitimate children? Well, the answer was threefold. First and foremost, child marriage had become a norm. So people were married off at the age of 3 and 4, and later on when they became grown up, they found that they were not compatible. And divorce is an expensive procedure, long drawn, so they would just drift apart and they have lived their own lives. So the children born out of these affairs were not legitimate, they were illegitimate. Secondly, prostitution was an official profession at that time. The census of Bombay of 1860 had registered 41 Parsi prostitutes. And all children born of prostitutes are accepted into the community and the religion. Our Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act of 1865 had a very or shall I say, peculiar provision, especially for men. They said that bigamy is sex with a woman other than a prostitute. So men were given the official right to visit prostitutes. Well, Parsis were traders. They amassed great wealth, but this came at a personal cost. Often they would go abroad, they would stay for 7 years, they would have to sign a contract saying they cannot leave before 7 years. They'd make 3-4 voyages like that. So maybe 28, 30 years of their lives they would spend outside the country. Very often they would have a second family over there. My husband's great-grandfather had a Chinese wife. And when he fell ill, she came down to take care of him, much to the disgust of her Parsi wife. And when he passed away, she just packed her bags and left. Now, we have all done our DNA analysis at this 23andMe, and it also gives us our DNA relatives. So Jahan got a message from a Chinese girl saying that she is the second cousin. So the conclusion was clear. All the illegitimate children of Parsi men and women were accepted into the community in the past. So why are the legitimate children of Parsi women being rejected now? Well, the Special Marriage Act may be the cause of the problem. I'll just give you a little short history on that. In 1865, we had our first Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act. Here a Parsi could marry a Parsi. In 1872 was the first Special Marriage Act, where two people of different faiths could marry. But they had to sign a declaration saying that they have separated themselves from the religion. They are not connected with their religion anymore. So at this stage, a Parsi could marry a Parsi, or they could marry under the Special Marriage Act and give up their religion, or there was a third alternative, they could convert to the one spouse's religion and marry under the personal law. Rati Petit converted to the Muslim religion and married Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And Suzanne Bray converted to the Parsi religion and married Ratan Tata. Now, in 1954, a new Special Marriage Act was made. And by this act, a Parsi man could marry a non-Parsi woman and they could both maintain their faiths. So now only intermarriage became a possibility, and the children of intermarried couples became a reality, legitimate children. So there is no age-old custom regarding intermarried women and their children. It is only possible after 1954. Now, there's one more flaw in this thing, because in 1936, we had our second Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act. 1936. In this act, a Parsi man could marry a Parsi woman, yes, but Parsi was defined in this act. It was defined as a Parsi Zoroastrian. This was the first time in all these years that the word Parsi was defined as Parsi Zoroastrian. And there was also a clause saying how you could cease to be a Parsi. You could cease to be a Parsi by converting to another religion. So in effect, who is not a Parsi is also defined by this Special Marriage Act. Now, very often, who is or is not a Parsi is defined by that old judgment of 1905 and 1915. At that time, the priests had done the religious ceremonies of conversion of Suzanne Bray and of the Navjot of Bella. But the judge decided that though conversion is a tenet of the religion, and yes, a child of a Parsi mother can be initiated into the religion if she wants to, but they decided to differentiate between the words Parsi and Zoroastrian. They said Parsi is a race or caste, and Zoroastrian is a religion. This was in 1905, 1915. On 1936, our Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act doesn't give any creed to race or caste. It only says religion. That a Parsi is a Parsi Zoroastrian, and you cease to be a Parsi by not being a Zoroastrian. And this law was used in court. You know that? In 1937, there was a case. There was a case where the woman said that her husband has converted to the Muslim religion, and divorce was granted because he was no longer a Parsi. And in 1984, Maneka Gandhi versus Indira Gandhi, Manika Gandhi wanted to claim that her husband Sanjay was a Parsi, and she wanted to claim inheritance rights under the Parsi law. But the court ruled that Sanjay's Navjot was not performed, he is not a Zoroastrian and therefore not a Parsi. So these are very important judgments which have not been considered. Then in 1960, Justice Modi, in Irani versus Irani, he decreed that the word Parsi is used for the Zoroastrians of India and Iran. I'll just read out what Mr. Fali Nariman wrote in the foreword of the book. It was held at variance with the views expressed in Pettit's case, 1908, as well as views expressed by the Privy Council in Bella's case. The Bombay High Court held that Parsi meant and only meant a person professing the Zoroastrian religion, whether in India or Iran. This particular judgment I have got from Fali Nariman, and it's printed in the book also, in the appendix. Though there is so much debate about Parsi Zoroastrian, but the word Zoroastrianism itself was only coined in 1874. It was not there before. Reverend Archibald Henry Sayce coined this word in 1874. The religion from ancient times was called the Parsi religion, or the Dena religion, or the Mazdayasti religion, or the good religion. Our own Dadabai Navroji read a paper on the Parsi religion at London, and similarly, Reverend John Wilson wrote his treatise on the Parsi religion as contained in the Zen Avesta. So before 1874, there was no word like Zoroastrianism. It was only invented later. Today, Parsi women in an interfaith marriage and their children often face discrimination. But in 1905, the court had appointed an expert committee on religion, and the most senior priests were part of that committee. And they were asked this question. I just read it out. Question and answers in religion filed before Commissioner in Saklat versus Bella, suit number 91 of 1915. It says, there is a Baste Kustian, that is to say, wearing sacred girdle round her waist widow, without a husband, and she had sexual intercourse with a Durvand, alien in religion. She conceived and gave birth to a child. On the death of the child, together with what living person's name, its own name be recited. The answer in brief was given, Adar Cheher is the name for the child, and to give up the child to the religion of the father was a sin. This was the answer given by the expert committee in religion in 1905. The question itself is very relevant because it asks what prayers are to be said, signifying unconditional acceptance of the child of a Parsi mother with a non-Parsi father. I wonder why we are told the exact opposite today. In India today, as Mr. Fali Nariman has written in the foreword of the book, the Constitution of India has conferred a separate fundamental right on all persons to freely express and practice their religion, no matter whether they belong to any race or caste. Religion has displaced caste. As India's foremost constitutional lawyer, he has expressed his personal point of view on the current state of the law regarding intermarried Parsi women and their children, and the constitutional remedy available to enforce it. With more than 50% of our marriages being interfaith, I think we should encourage our women who marry out to bring the children up in our faith. George Washington had said, truth will ultimately prevail where there are pains taken to bring it to light. The research presented in this book under the guidance of Mr. Fali Nariman was started for personal reasons. It is perhaps now a clarion call for revealing the truth about our past and re-establishing the rights of all our intermarried Parsi women and their children who have had their Navjot done. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your valuable insights and documenting the years of twists and turns happening in history. And we have this wonderful book here, which must be read, I believe, must be read by everybody who are not even Parsis, minorities or not. With this, May I request our chief guest, Erwad Sam Kabadia, to say a few words.
Professor Bhattacharya, Mr. Kirti Debu, Prochi Mehta, ladies and gentlemen. Zoroastrianism is a religion into which I have been born. Its beauty lies in its explicit simplicity. There are no diktats, and the individual designs her own destiny. There is freedom of choice. One has to understand that one can do what he likes or she likes, but ultimately she has to face the consequences of her choice. Respect and dignity, I believe, is the core of our religion. How we interact with one another with respect and dignity is something which Zoroastrianism stands for. As Prochi Mehta has explained, her provocative and well-intentioned book arises out of the fact that her daughter married a non-Parsi and their children are not permitted to enter the temple in Kolkata. With 4 deaths to every birth, month after month, the Parsi community in India is sailing majestically towards its destiny, extinction in the decades to come. I have the highest regard for our co-religionists in Iran, who were often consulted in the past when there were questions of religious importance as to answers to be sought. The questions raised and answers given have been dutifully recorded in what are called the riwayats. For centuries, people were sent out to Iran, their answers given on such matters as, if you have servants who are non-Parsis or Zoroastrians and who would actively like to become Zoroastrians, should they or should they not be inducted? The answer is emphatically, they must be inducted. If they do not, it is considered to be sinful. These questions and answers continued for a period of 3 centuries. Started first in 1478 and continued for 3 centuries. There is a reference in the book to some fringe elements like the Ilmekshnomists and the Theosophical Society. But could these elements have influenced such fundamental matters of such fundamental importance to the religion? Or was it a question of arrogance displacing humility? Arrogance destroys what humility creates. As you see, I am an ordained priest and have consecrated several interfaith marriages, inducted the children of such unions into our faith. If that is considered to be heresy, then why should anybody be bothered? I have to face the consequences, nobody else. There's a reference in the book to what Dr. Dhalla has mentioned, that religious principles should not be influenced by thinking in society. My feeling is that unfortunately, that is what is happening today in our religion. The Qisse Sanjan is a document pertaining to the arrival of the Parsis fleeing Islamic invasion in Iran. We are informed by the author that it is to be considered a narrative and not one of historical importance. We landed first in Diu, subsequently moved to Surat, Navsari, Udwada, finally landing up in Mumbai. where we finally made a name for ourselves. The core of the book lies in two legal cases. The first one, Pettit versus Jijiboy, 1908, and the second one, Saklat versus Bella, 1924. They are similar but not identical in nature. In the first case, one Ratan Tata, not the current one but the earlier one, a cousin of the founder of the Tata Empire, Jamshedji Nasarwanji Tata, at the age of 40 fell in love with a French girl almost half his age. But the girl insisted in being inducted into the religion before the marriage, which she was by a high priest with 60 others in attendance. The question arose, can such an induction take place? And if so, can the person concerned partake of the assets of the community, particular reference to entry into the temples and the use of dogmas after death? In both the cases, the first one in the High Court of Bombay, the second one fought first two cases twice in a lower court in Rangoon and then ultimately in the Privy Council in London, was that such inductions are accepted in the religion and there is no question of not doing so. The question of whether such inductees can partake of our assets were answered slightly differently. In the first case, the answer was an emphatic no. In the two judgments given by the lower courts in Rangoon, at that time Burma was a part of India, was yes, they can. But at the Privy Council, there was a slight change, and the answer was no, if the deed trust does not permit it to happen. But, and that was a big emphatic but, the trustees of the temples and the dogmas may at their discretion change the deed trust at a time when our population is decreasing, when the daily footfalls in the temples are dropping, when some temples have already shut their doors, others are being used for purposes other than for which they were made. Why cannot the trustees change the deed? A little distance away from Abu Road railway station lies a desolate dogma where the peripheral walls have been dismantled. People walk across what at one time was the center of the dogma and go across on the other side to attend marketplace. Just a while ago, we were informed that there is a temple also in Abu Road which celebrated its centenary some time ago. Reference was made by some speakers earlier about the advent of the Constitution in India when we became an independent nation, and that the constitutional law supersedes every other personal law of every other community. This is a view held by several legal luminaries. There are several in the community who hold the view that Parsis are a race apart, a very pure race. Current status of scientific research completely disputes that way of thinking. There is not a single community anywhere in the world which can claim to be racially pure. Research done on bones dug out of former dogmas in Sanjan, one of the earliest settlements of the Parsi community, have again disproved the fact that the Parsi community is a racially pure one. A few days ago, the 12th World Zoroastrian Conference concluded its proceedings in New York. The keynote speaker was one of our own from Delhi, Ervat Justice Rohinton Nariman. And the subject of his talk was gender equality in Zoroastrianism. We've read great stories of our women leading armies into battle, leading armadas into naval battle, and did a great job of it. Why then are we discriminating against our own sisters and daughters? I'm extremely proud to be a member of the Delhi Parsi Anjuman, who in their rules and regulations formulated several decades ago accept non-Zoroastrian spouses of Zoroastrians as members, not only as members, but members with voting rights. Their children are allowed to participate in what are called the Farrower classes, which impart religious instruction to all children. And if they wish to, they can be inducted into our religion with then the possibility of entering the temple also. Once again, talking of our co-religionists in Iran, extremely pragmatic in contrast to what way we are. When there were no vultures for the dogmas, they stopped the practice. We continue it, although there are no vultures in India. And when the time came, they allowed all and sundry to enter the temples. Even tourists today enter the temples in Iran. In my view, the question raised by the title of the book has been well answered already in both the judgments that we took off. I wish the book much success, a success which it deserves, because it comes at a time when we need to get our thinking straight in India. We need a golden standard by which to judge our actions. There was and probably is that standard still existing in how they practice the faith in Iran. We practice that our own high priests accepted that advice. Why have we changed it? The results and the consequences of that are obvious now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for the valuable insights. And perhaps this book could play an important role in the fight for equality and against discrimination. Now, I would like to invite our guest of honor, Mr. Karsi Devu, to say a few words and share his thoughts on the book.
Good evening, everybody. I read Mr. Kapadia, Mr. Bhattacharya, Prochi, and all of our friends. It gives me great pleasure to be here. My thanks to Mr. Neogi of Neogi Books, the publisher of the book, who is the Parsi, by Prochi Mehta. 6 months back, after my appointment as a member of National Commission for Minorities, I was introduced to Prochi Mehta by one of our common friends. She sent me 3 books at that time, about 6 months back. The Parsis of Calcutta and some other topics was there. And then after, before 2 months, she has sent, who is the Parsi, this book was sent. Topics she has discussed in this book are very lively and interesting. The book is kind of time capsule or a milestone for future generations to come. The controversy of who can be considered as a Parsi is raging from time to time of the delivery of famous judgment given by Justice Biman and Justice Dawar till date. Till date, looking back to our history, about 200 years, we can easily observe that we have changed. A tussle between Orthodox and Reformist is age-old, but we can observe that reforms are slow but certain. Once, which was called anti-religious activities, nowadays it's a normal practice. After we came to India from Iran, we started following many customs of the land, keeping away customs we were following in Iran. The question is, who framed the rules for the community? So going back to few years, in 1787, Bombay government issued instruction to form a panchayat to look after and settle internal dispute and manage affairs of the community. This way, several panchayats and anjumans framed certain rules and regulations by calling public meeting and passing resolutions according to that time, but unfortunately, the trustee began to behave like supreme authority and answerable to none. Laymen have to follow what they order. They had right to beat and insult a person by beating with shoes if any community member disobey and break the rules framed by the panchayat. They had to follow what panchayat or anjuman decide. Girls were not allowed to go to school. Marriage between ladies and priestly class were not encouraged and were prohibited. A woman had to stay away for few days for a menstrual period. There were so many customs like that. A case of Mirbai and Doshibai is very interesting. About 200 years back, Mirbai Kama, a rich lady, decided to educate her daughter Doshibai and sent her to school run by a British lady. It was forbidden for a girl to go to school. As Mirbai broke the tradition, she and her family were excommunicated by panchayat. Widows' marriage were also forbidden. Ladies were not allowed to seek employment. When Jamsetji Jijibai started girls' school, Orthodox lobby had opposed. Today we are proud of Miss Pinaz Masani as a ghazal singer, but Khorshid Binochar Homji and her sister was a nightmare. When they were stopped to perform on stage and in film, she was forced to change her name from Khorshid to Saraswati Devi, and she was the first lady musician of Indian cinema. This was the time. The panchayat was everything, and they were forced to certain customs. There are so many such cases in Parsi history. Reforms are slow but sure. We have changed in last 2 centuries. Time forced us to do so. We don't know what will happen in coming years. We have to change ourselves, or time will force us to change. In this book, Prochius rightly quoted Dadabhai Naoroji, a reformist of its time. Dadabhai Naoroji also one of the person who had advocated for girls' education, and he was opposed. One Parsi, when Dadabhai Naoroji went to a Parsi and asked him to put her daughter in school, so the Parsi said, "Yati tane pheki devas, I will throw away from gallery." And that was time. So Dadabhai Naoroji quotation is also there. At present, there were 2 main cases which are pending in court. One is in Calcutta High Court, which Proche has already done, and another one in Supreme Court by Gurlok Gupta, who has challenged the Parsi Panchayat for not allowing her to enter Parsi religious property and for not allowing her to perform religious rites, even though she has married a non-Parsi under a Special Marriage Act. So, Prochi has challenged the authority by writing this book with lot of evidence and quotes from religious books and opinion of Parsi Zoroastrian scholars. Since the matter is in the court, let them decide. I am neither an orthodox nor a religious scholar, but do believe that law and society must change with time. Of course, by court verdict and by mutual understanding in community. Now, who is a Parsi? It is question mark. So, I think it is yet to be decided. Who will decide it? Court will decide or community will decide. I once again thank Prochi Mehta and Neogi Book for inviting me as guest of honor on the occasion of launching of this book. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We all know that we've come a long way in terms of reforms, but as Sir said, we have to change or time will force us to change. With this, what is the road ahead? And we also have with us Dr. Shahnaz Kama, whose work with the Parzor project for the preservation and promotion of Parsi Zoroastrian culture and heritage is very well known. May I request you to say a few words for the August gathering?
Actually, I shouldn't be on the stage, but I've read this book. I think it is a very important and a very brave book to write. So there are just two things which I want to emphasize, because in all the talk and in all the anger, we forget one basic person, the creator of this faith, Zarathustra. He says in his Gathas, and I'm quoting him, "Hear with your ears the highest truth I preach, and listen to them with care." And he goes on to say, "Choose for yourself, each by each." And he continues to decide, and he continues to talk about complete gender equality. The last Gatha is for his daughter, where she talks about husband and wife working together. I think this is what has been forgotten, unfortunately, in all the anger that we have created for ourselves. I think, Prochi, when I was reading your book, I remember another very important statement which is carved in the rocks of Nake Rustam, the Darius statement, where he goes on, it's a beautiful statement, where he talks about, "I do not want the great to harass the poor, nor do I want the poor to harass the great or the rich. What is truth? That is what I desire." And I think the whole concept of Zoroastrianism is based around truth. We are a religion of action. We believe in humakta, that's the good thoughts, hukta, good words, but unless we follow them by hurvarashta, good deeds, we're not going to get anywhere. And I think it is important for us to decide each by each. We have a very beautiful concept, a metaphor, called the Chinvat Pool, the bridge of choice. And you cross that to enter paradise, which is a beautiful place of song and flowers and sweet smelling breezes. The idea is that it's a metaphor. You cross it by the choices you have made on this earth. It's not that you are judged at that bridge. And it's up to you to choose wisely. For us, I think each one of us who's a Zoroastrian over here needs to go before the sacred fire. And for us, every religion talks about goodness and truth, etc., etc. But for us, we have no idols in our fire temple. We do nowadays keep portraits of Zarathustra, the prophet, as we perceive him to be. There's no proof. But the important thing is that we stand before the fire of Ahura Mazda, Lord of light and wisdom, to choose light and wisdom by our own conscience, our daina, that which helps you choose. The ruwan, which is the soul, actually translates as the chooser. And choice is completely ingrained in our faith. And that is why I think it is so important what you have chosen to do. And each one of us needs to sit quietly in our fire temple. And I'm talking to across the country. Each one of us needs to sit quietly before the fire of Asha, truth. And in that silence, choose for ourselves what road we want to follow. Thank you so much.